shame. Even when I hear that word, the word shame, there's a contraction that happens. My memories of my childhood, my younger childhood, were magical. My mother was very creative, very loving, very supportive. I was always a dreamer, very playful, and she always encouraged that. I remember memories where I would like to pretend I was a cat and I get on the floor and she'd give me milk on the floor by my request. Or feed me lettuce when I wanted to pretend a bunny rabbit. So I just have very magical memories of the younger childhood. And then when I got older in the teen years, I started to notice boys. And I wasn't aware at the time how little of a father role model I had. My parents divorced when I was 7. And when I got about to be 15, early 16, I started to get a little rebellious. My mother loved me, but she became very strict. I didn't like the curfews. I didn't like that I had to be home by 11. So I left home. I packed my bags in the attic and snuck out one day and left home. And that lasted for a few months, and then I ended up living with my father and my stepmother. And my father was physically present, but he wasn't emotionally present. He didn't know how to say, I love you. He didn't know how to tell me what to do. He didn't know how to assert rules. And I grew up in middle-class suburbia. I was very naive. I had no street smarts. And I was starving for a masculine presence to say, I love you, and to tell me what to do. And I found that, or so I thought. See, a lot of predators, when they're going to look for young girls, they go to shopping malls, schoolyards, and foster homes. Well, I was in the shopping mall one day with my school books under my arm, and this very charismatic man said things I'd never heard before, and he lured me in. And he kept me out later and later until one day I came home and my bags were packed. My stepmother didn't want me there anymore. So now he had me fully in his grip. And he did say, I love you, and he did tell me what to do, but he was also a master manipulator. Now fast forward to the age of 42. It's November 1999, and I'm standing in a Toronto subway, and directly across from me is a sign from the universe, like a physical sign. It's a billboard, sponsored by the police department, that says, teenage prostitution is child abuse. And I went into shock, and I couldn't breathe, because that child was me. And until that moment, it hadn't even occurred to me that I'd been a victim. Now, I don't remember the trip home. Next thing I know, I'm standing in my bathroom and I'm looking out the window onto the backyard. And 27 years of suppressed emotions erupted out of me. The rage at my junior high school principal when I realized for the first time what he had done, is the memory came back to me at the age of 16 when he picked me up at a bar and took me to a hotel that you rent by the hour and said, oh, you'll be good at this. This will be a good profession for you. The anger at the man who tricked me with my love and turned into my pimp. The grief at the loss of my adolescence when I should have been at my school prom, but instead I was being sold off for dollars. All of this erupted out so intensely and so severely all at the same time. I thought I was literally going to explode, and I cried out, God, please help me. And the second I spoke those words, a bird landed on my back patio railing, and it was like someone flicked a switch. I instantly became peaceful. Because you see, spirit speaks to me through animals because they know I'm going to go look it up. And was there just long enough to get a good look at it. I'd never seen a bird like that before. It had the body of a dove with black feathers, and when the sun hit it, it was blue and purple iridescent, and then it flew away. So I ran and I got my Animal Speak book by Ted Andrews, and I looked it up and I found that the bird was a grackle. The teaching of a grackle is to release emotional congestion from the past before it manifests into physical illness so you can move forward into the future. So that's what I did. I gave myself permission to purge. For 2 days, I stayed home and I cried and I screamed and I collapsed and I woke up and I did it again. Now, if I had known about the breath work that I facilitate now, I could have done it in 2 hours, but that was my journey at the time. And at the end of those 2 days, it was like a veil lifted. And I started to feel an element of self-love for the first time in years. You see, I was very good at covering up my shame. The shame I carried around for 27, 28 years, I came across as very confident. But deep down, my inner voice was saying, oh my God, if they know I'm really a whore, they won't want to be my friend. So I would choose boyfriends who were alcoholics, verbally abusive. Fortunately, I was wise enough not to get in a physical abusive relationship. Although, after I got away from that first pimp, female pimp, so I just experienced the distorted masculine and the distorted feminine, because once I got away from him, it was a woman who got control of me, and she threatened to beat the crap out of me if I didn't do what she said. Eventually, she did beat me up, and that woke me up and got me out of that life. So here I am, 27 days later, after my day of the grackle, as I call it, and the feelings of shame start to dissipate because I spent 2 days clearing all this emotional residue of the past that I'd been locking inside that I didn't even know I had been locking inside. And I literally got on the phone and called up my friends. Guess what happened to me as a teenager? For them, everything made sense now. They couldn't understand why I would pick the men that I did. And that was a turning point for me. I started attracting a very different type of man in my life. The next relationship I had after that, he was very wise, intellectual, supportive, mature, kind. To this day, we're still friends. So in my personal experience, and my story is very mild compared to some, I was reading an article a few weeks ago, that was extremely disturbing to me. Child sex slavery is the fastest growing business in crime today in America and Canada. More so than guns and drugs, because guns and drugs they can only sell one time, whereas a child they can sell over and over and over and over and over again. And it's growing at an alarming rate. And the age is getting younger and younger and younger because we've been numbed by the media of what we're seeing out there, of those so young being sexualized. I read in this article of one girl who had been rescued, and she told of how they have menus where you get to pick toddler, 5-year-old, 12-year-old, or teen. So my story's so mild to what's happening now. And I can't imagine the shame that's being inflicted upon them. You see, as I was about to say before I shared that about child sex slavery in today's world, what I've observed and what I've talked to of others who have been sexually abused, there's shame that comes with it. And I remember hearing Oprah speak about this. You know, she came out with her abuse just before my experience happened. I believe that played a role in the opening of that. See, the nerve endings on our body exist, whether it's consensual or not. So the physical pleasure, we're still capable of experiencing orgasm, whether it's consensual or not. Whether we're doing it out of love or whether it's happening through abuse, we're still capable of experiencing that orgasm. We don't always have control over the physical nerve endings. So when it's a sexual abuse experience, a lot of shame comes around that and self-blame. I know for me, I just thought I was a bad girl with lower morals than others because part of my experience involved physical pleasure. I was always very orgasmic. So I was sure that I was just at a lower level than other people. So after that day of the grackle, that was the beginning of my healing journey. I still had more to do. A few years later, I discovered breath work, which was huge for me. That cleared the remaining layers of the emotional residue that I was carrying inside my body. And I also didn't make sense to me that my spirituality was in such a separate compartment from my sexuality. So I began having my own conversations with God. And around that same time, I had recently been certified as a Reiki master teacher. So I just learned about the chakras and moving the energy through the body. So I started experimenting. I thought, I wonder what will happen if when I'm orgasmic, I move the energy up my body. And it was like, whoa! And then later when I discovered the breath and started incorporating the breath with that, and then having my own conversations with God and wanting to understand at the core of my being, because I knew how beautiful sex could be and was. And it didn't make sense to me that those two compartments, our spirit body and our sexual body, were separate. So through my healing journey and through my conversations with God, and I learned how to integrate what I call the lover essence of God's source into my sexual experience, I believe, I know, that it was that journey that dissipated the remaining shame that I had around my sexual body through my experience. Because what I discovered is truly beautiful. I discovered when we merge our primal sexual body with our divine spirit body from a space of peacefulness with everyone from our past, it is a joy unlike any other. You see, it is our divine design. And our nervous systems and our breath and our sexual energy are all designed to work together. And we know how to integrate that with our connection to spirit, with our connection to source. The physical experience is more profound, more beautiful, more expansive, and our connection to spirit is as well, because it's how we're designed, or this would not be possible. It is our divine design. So yeah, I have no more shame from that, thanks to the breath work and to all the healing journey I did. I mean, we're humans. We're still going to fuck up along the way. We're still going to say things we wish we hadn't said. But the big thing I learned is that we are all divine, eternal beings. We are all spiritual beings who came into this body temple to have a physical experience. And the very fact that we exist means that we are worthy of all the good, all the blessings, all the abundance and love that the universe could possibly bring us. And when we do the inner work, and we work through this, I've heard the word forgiveness a lot. Part of my own healing journey was to write my own book. I have here the 4 sacred laws of sexual enlightenment. And the second sacred law is forgiveness. Forgiveness of past abusers, relationships, religion, parents, self. And that is a gift that you give yourself. And I know through my personal experience, I've discovered that when we do our own work, the first sacred law is the gift. Just embracing our sexual energy as a gift, our bodies as a gift. The third sacred law is responsibility, taking responsibility for our own healing, our own power, conscious communication. The fourth is the invitation, inviting the lover essence of God's source, whatever that means to you, to the party. And when we do that, when we take responsibility for our own healing, and when we clear the emotional residue from our past wounding, from our past shame, from our past guilt, and we set ourselves free from that, we're still left with the memory of the experience. That never goes away. But the emotional trigger of it gets set free, and the pain and the shame transcends to wholeness and wisdom. I heard Keith share his story so beautifully, how he's taken his pain and his shame and now using it to serve others. That's been my passion, my journey, to transcend beyond the pain and the shame, and now take the wisdom I've learned from that to support others. So I honor all of you, you beautiful divine beings in this journey called life. And thank you for listening.